Isabella Rodriguez was born in 1975 in Colombia. Her parents, Eduardo and Elizabeth Rodriguez, wanted a better life for her and her sister. In the 1990s, they moved to Florida, where they eventually obtained residency. They had a truly happy life in the sunny city, where Isabella and her sister Adriana thrived. Isabella received U.S. citizenship when she was 27 and married William Holman. The couple eventually divorced after 10 years of marriage, but they remained on good terms, and Isabella was not one to hold a grudge. In fact, she never spoke ill of others. She was kind and simply wanted to live a long and happy life. In 2015, it seemed that all her dreams had come true. She met a man named Louis Bennett online. And they began a relationship. It was known that he had once been a sailor, and at the time they met, he owned a solar panel manufacturing company. At a young age, Louis moved with his family from the UK to Australia, made money there, and bought a catamaran. He later took Isabella on a trip aboard this vessel, and together they visited Tahiti and Singapore. The relationship between Isabella and Louis developed quickly, and by July 2016, they welcomed a daughter, whom they named Amelie. 6 months after the baby's birth, the couple purchased an apartment on the Atlantic coast of Florida. On April 30, 2017, after Isabella and Louis left their 9-month-old daughter with relatives. They set off for St. Martin, a small Caribbean island where they planned to go for their honeymoon. For them, it was the trip of a lifetime, and they embarked on it aboard Louis's catamaran. Over the next 2 weeks, they sailed through the British Virgin Islands and then along the coast of Puerto Rico before heading to Cuba, where they spent most of their vacation. From the outside, they appeared to be a happy, loving couple traveling on their catamaran, which they called Surf in Summer. Summer brought them a sense that it was the happiest summer of their lives. After 2 weeks at sea, the couple headed home at around 5:30 p.m. on May 14th. The catamaran set sail from the Cuban resort of Varadero. 3 hours later, she called her sister and told her that she would be home the next day. She was joyfully looking forward to reuniting with her little girl and was very eager to return home as soon as possible. Here is the translation of your text into English. Shortly after that, she called her sister. Louis asked her to take control of the boat. The couple took turns steering the catamaran at night, and that night it was Isabella's turn. It was the final stage of the journey that the girl had been looking forward to so much, but unfortunately, the catamaran and Isabella would never make it home. During the night, Louis was awakened by a loud noise. When the vessel was in open water, he got on deck and noticed that the sails and rigging were slack, and his wife was nowhere to be seen. It was clear that the catamaran was about to sink, so Louis quickly gathered a suitcase and moved it. Grabbed 2 gym bags, several distress flares, a radio transmitter, and a lifeboat. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. Louis signaled for help from the life raft. In desperation, he contacted the U.S. Coast Guard and reported that he was 26 nautical miles west of Cable Beach in the Bahamas, in the open sea of international waters. He was alone, his ship was sinking, there had been some kind of collision, and worst of all, he could not find his wife. Around 4 a.m., the Coast Guard helicopter crew finally spotted the life raft. Louis was safe and sound, but he was very worried about his missing wife. The rescuers managed to retrieve his backpack, which was usually heavy, along with 225 silver coins he had grabbed before abandoning the catamaran. The catamaran was found at dawn. It had capsized overnight but had not sunk. Louis was eventually taken to the southernmost city in Florida. During the interrogation, Louis told the police that they had been taking turns steering the vessel, and at the time of the accident, it was her turn. At that moment, Louis was sleeping in the cabin and was awakened by the sensation that the catamaran had collided with something. When he went out on deck and did not find his wife, he began to call her name. But he received no response. He was concerned that part of the rigging had come loose and could have thrown her overboard. He was an experienced sailor and knew that this was very possible and potentially life-threatening. That same day, May 15th, Isabella was officially declared missing. A search and rescue operation was conducted by both water and air, but after 4 days of fruitless searching, the rescue operation was called off. They could do nothing more. 24 hours after the search ended, Isabella Lewis Bennett requested official confirmation from the Coast Guard that his wife was dead. Isabella was his wife and the mother of his child. He had seen her less than 5 days ago, and yet he had lost hope so quickly. The authorities explained the man's strange behavior as his overwhelming grief, but it still seemed quite odd to them. Lewis's request was denied simply because the Coast Guard did not have the authority to issue such documents. On May 24, Lewis informed one of the television stations that he planned to return to Cuba and continue searching for his wife on a rented boat. It seems that he had not given up hope of finding her after all. 3 days later, he met Isabella's sister and told her that he had just returned from Cuba. He informed her that he met with the Cuban authorities, checked all the hospitals, but he still had not been able to find Isabella. He also added that it had already been 2 weeks since her disappearance, and he had lost hope of ever seeing her alive again. On May 28, Lewis went to the house where his wife's family lived to pick up his daughter, but they did not want to let him do so. A quarrel broke out, and during the disagreement, Isabella's sister repeatedly claimed that Lewis was responsible for Isabella's death and even suggested that he wanted to kill her mother. The conflict was resolved only with the help of the police, who returned the daughter to Lewis. However, the police also found the man's behavior strange. Not only was it odd that he had gotten into a fight over his daughter and remained calm, but his composure after Isabella's disappearance raised suspicions as well. On May 30th, Bennett was summoned for questioning by the police, during which he denied all accusations of involvement in his wife's disappearance. According to him, he had planned to live with Isabella for his entire life, and they were truly happy together, but now he and his daughter would have to live without Isabella. The police approached this statement with skepticism. While Lewis assured everyone of their happy life, the missing woman's relatives told a completely different story. Her family reported that the couple had begun to argue frequently after the birth of their child, and neighbors confirmed this. One of the main reasons for the fights was that Lewis insisted on moving to Australia, while Isabella resolutely refused to leave the United States. Apparently, their honeymoon was supposed to help the spouses mend their relationship and resolve this dispute while the investigation into Isabella's disappearance was ongoing. The police turned their attention to the investigation concerning Lewis, which seemingly had no connection to him. The thing is, a year earlier, Ben had served as the first mate on a yacht. The captain had once hidden 617 collectible silver and gold coins worth about $100,000. Once, when the yacht was docked in the Caribbean without a crew on board, someone broke in and stole only those very coins. At the time of their disappearance, the case had already been closed, but when one of the rescuers recalled that coins had been found in Lewis's backpack, they decided to investigate further. A year later, these coins were identified by the captain of the yacht. He stated that they were part of his collection, which had been stolen earlier. Thanks to this information, the police were able to obtain a search warrant for Lewis's home on June 16, 2017. During the search of his apartment, 162 gold coins were discovered hidden in a closet. But by that time, Lewis had already left the United States. He had moved to England with his daughter, where his parents lived. Because of this, authorities were unable to arrest him until he returned to the U.S. Lewis's financial situation was not good, and this forced him to return to the States, where he needed to sell his apartment and collect insurance for the sunken catamaran. On August 28, 2017, Lewis Bennett was arrested in Florida. He was charged with theft, but he insisted on his innocence. A few days later, a federal judge set Bennett's bail at $250,000, but he was unable to post such a large amount. Therefore, he had to remain in custody awaiting trial. While waiting, he attempted to gain official recognition of Isabella as deceased, which would allow him to sell their personal property and access her bank account funds. The judge denied him this twice, as the investigation into her disappearance was still ongoing. In November 2017, Bennett pleaded guilty to both the theft of the coins and the willful transportation of the coins to the United States. Bennett's parents appealed to the judge overseeing the case for leniency at sentencing, arguing that his young daughter had already lost her mother. On February 20, 2018, Bennett was sentenced to 7 months in prison, after which he faced 3 years of probation. 2 years after Isabella Hellman's disappearance, she was officially declared dead. Palm Beach Circuit Judge Scott of Scour wrote that Isabella was presumed to have died on May 14, 2017. He also noted that during this period, there had been no communication from Isabella, which clearly indicated her death. On the same day the verdict was announced in the stolen coins case, Bennett was charged with murder. The police were still intent on uncovering what happened to Isabella. Their theory was that he intentionally caused the catamaran they were traveling on to sink. Investigators claimed that Lewis's motive was to acquire his wife's assets and pay off his debts, after which he could leave with his daughter for Australia. It was also established that several months before her demise, Isabella confessed in text messages that she was afraid of her husband and felt he no longer respected her, and also stated that she was afraid to return home. The examination of the catamaran revealed that before it sank, the portholes below the waterline were open, and the damage to the 2 hulls appeared to have been inflicted from the inside. After reviewing photographs and video footage taken by the U.S. Coast Guard, an expert hired by the FBI to assist in the investigation of this crime determined that Bennett's initial story could not possibly be true. An associate professor at the U.S. Coast Guard's Department of Naval Architecture and Ocean Engineering stated that the damage indicated it was intentionally caused, and nothing was the result of an accident. The rescue team that discovered the sunken catamaran also found nothing it could have collided with. Divers inspecting the vessel were hesitant to enter it, fearing it could collapse at any moment. And so, it did. The catamaran sank to a depth of over 4 feet, after which a detailed inspection could not be conducted. In November 2019, as a result of a plea deal, Bennett was charged with involuntary manslaughter, which spared Lewis from a life sentence. He now faces a maximum of 8 years in prison. In a document signed by Bennett and submitted by the prosecutor, the court heard that he could not remember whether he searched for his wife or called for her when he realized she was missing. He did not launch any distress flares and did not look for his wife on the catamaran or in the water. This indicated that Ben did not seek help immediately. Instead, he loaded belongings and some valuables, including coins, into a raft and then attempted to stage a collision that led to the sinking of the catamaran, after which he left the vessel without his wife. The prosecution stated that he did indeed call for help, but 45 minutes had passed after he stopped and realized his wife was nowhere to be found. It was known that Bennett had extensive sailing experience on open water, including training in emergency procedures. He clearly knew how to act in the event of an accident, but for some reason did not apply that knowledge that night. Was it a conscious choice on his part, or did he simply panic? He should have ensured that the vessel operated by Isabella had life jackets and a personal locator. The prosecution pointed this out, as well as the fact that Bennett did not have the proper experience and training that Lewis had. Essentially, Ben acknowledged his negligence, which led to Isabella falling overboard and drowning. Only Bennett truly knows what happened that night on the catamaran, and he is unlikely to ever share it. On May 28, 2019, 42-year-old Lewis Bennett pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter for the death of his wife, Isabella Hellman. As part of the plea deal, he waived his right to appeal. Before the judge announced his decision, Bennett requested the opportunity for parole so he could continue raising his daughter. He said he would do everything he could to keep Isabella's memory alive in their daughter. However, Judge Morin sided with the prosecution and sentenced Lewis to 8 years in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. The Hellman family's attorney stated that Amelia lost her mother, but that does not mean she has lost her mother's family.